Welcome to Let's Get Ready for D-RAD 2025. Over 50 network partners and organizations have participated in the planning for the March 2025 disability rights advocacy events and activities at the state capitol. This online informational webinar will provide important information and guidance for helping participants make the most of Disability Rights Advocacy Day on March 6, 2025, as well as IDD Awareness Day on March 19th. Our hope is to provide participants with information on navigating the state capitol and ideas and information about how you can connect with your legislators on legislation and policy that is important to you, and give you an opportunity to share ideas about how you celebrate, promote, and protect the human rights of people with disabilities in Colorado. It's been said that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. Together, through advocacy and lifting up the voices of Coloradans with disabilities, we are capable of affecting real change, enduring change. To provide a little background on the month of March as a month of disability rights advocacy, on February 26, 1987, President Ronald Reagan officially declared Proclamation 5613, making March National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. The proclamation called for people to provide understanding, encouragement, and opportunities to help persons with disabilities to lead productive and fulfilling lives. Over the last 30-plus years, the month of March has expanded its reach for disability rights advocacy and is now commonly regarded as the month that people with a diversity of disabilities come together to raise awareness about disabilities, promote understanding and acceptance, and highlight the contributions and challenges faced by individuals with disabilities. We hope you'll join us this March to celebrate, promote, and protect the human rights of people with disabilities and actively support their full inclusion and participation in the communities throughout their lifetime. Two important events are scheduled at the Colorado State Capitol in March. The first is on Thursday, March 6, 2025, called Disability Rights Advocacy Day, or D-RAD, and the second on Wednesday, March 19, 2025, IDD Awareness Day. While this informational presentation will be largely focused on the upcoming D-RAD on March 6th, much of the information provided will also be relevant for your participation in IDD Awareness Day later this month. Before we jump into logistics, we want to first thank the many sponsors and disability rights community partners for this year's event. A special thanks to our sponsors for this year's event are the ARC of Colorado, who took lead on this year's event, providing generous financial support and logistics for this year's D-RAD and co-sponsorship for this year's IDD Awareness Day. Alliance, who took lead on IDD Awareness Day, which will be later this month, providing generous financial support and logistics for and co-sponsorship for this year's D-RAD event. Craig Hospital, providing generous financial support and co-sponsorship with Pasco for over 400 grab-and-go lunches at this year's D-RAD event. Disability Law Colorado, who provided incredible sponsorship and generous support for our D-RAD webpage. JFK Partners, who provided breakfast and support team t-shirts for this year's D-RAD event and are also co-sponsors for this year's IDD Awareness Day. Pasco for co-sponsoring with Craig Hospital for those grab-and-go lunches this year, and Topeka Parent Centers providing generous support to help accommodate the additional chairs, tables, signage, print materials for this year's D-RAD. And thank you to the over 50 disability rights community partners and team of volunteers who have helped make this year's events possible. So let's talk about Disability Rights Advocacy Day, Thursday, March 6th at 2025. The day will begin between 8 and 9 a.m. with a breakfast in the West Foyer. This is a time for folks to settle in, catch up with new and old friends, enjoy some coffee, and eat some small breakfast munchies. From 9 to 9:30, we will move to the House and Senate chambers where we will watch tributes on the floors. And then there'll be two sessions where we will be multitasking several different opportunities. One will be a bill review and networking opportunity in the West Foyer, meeting with state legislators and their legislative staff, and visiting the exhibit hall. We'll take a break between 10:30 and 10:45, and the second break between 11:30 and 11:45, just before we gear up for our 11:45 press conference in the West Foyer. And then the day should conclude sometime around 12:15 to 12:30 or so with grab-and-go lunches in the West Foyer. Entrances to the state capitol. There are two entrances to the state capitol, one off of Colfax entrance, which is a pretty steep staircase up to the top. And then, of course, there's an ADA accessible ground level entrance on the south side of the Capitol, which is the intersection of 14th Street and Sherman under the stairs. Generally speaking, parking is not available on site at the Capitol. There is some very limited accessible parking just inside the gate. And there's lots and lots of metered parking and pay lots located nearby. This graphic shows you where the Capitol is, and then you can see that there's some parking on the east side of the Capitol in particular. There are several parking lots there, but then also on the streets that surround the Capitol, plenty of metered parking. But you should plan to arrive early enough to find that parking place and make your way into the Capitol so that you're able to be there right on time for the 9 o'clock House and Senate floor tributes. So again, there's a limited number of parking spaces available on a first come, first serve basis in Capitol Circle. To reach it, you would enter at 14th and Sherman and then notify the Colorado State Patrol at the entrance that you would like to use those spots. In order to do so, you must have a disability placard or a license plate that indicates you require accessible parking. If you're arriving by bus or a tour bus, keep in mind that all tour buses visiting the Capitol must load and unload all passengers at the corner of Grant and Colfax and then make your way in. Please allow plenty of time for your travel so that you can adjust to these parking requirements and have plenty of time to make it into the building and get yourself through security. One of the things that you will notice when you first arrive at the Capitol is several folks wearing these bright blue support team t-shirts. These were generously sponsored by JFK Partners. And if you're not familiar with JFK Partners, they're a program at the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. And they are designated as Colorado's what's called a UCED, the University's Center of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities and Leadership Education, and the Neurodevelopmental Disabilities, or what we call the LEND program. JFK Partners' mission is to lead the way in evidence-based interdisciplinary clinical care, education, research, and community partnerships to enrich the lives of children, youth, and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and special health care needs. When you arrive at the Capitol, you'll see plenty of these sport team t-shirts, these bright blue t-shirts, both outside the Capitol at each entrance, just inside security, and then throughout each floor. You know, you'll want to use your D-RAD support team to answer questions for you. They can provide directions to each activity and let you know where they're located in the Capitol. They'll be able to share with you miniature calendar or schedules. They'll have those ready to hand out during the event. They're able to help you find a legislator. And if you don't know your legislator's name, they'd be happy to help you look that up based on where you live, your address where you live, to help you find who's your legislator and where is their office in the Capitol building. They're also able to help you pull a legislator off the House or Senate floor if you've never done that before, and they can walk you through how to have that conversation, what information needs to be on it, and much, much more. One of the tools we like to make sure that folks, particularly in our deaf-blind community, are aware of is what is called ERA. So ERA is a new digital tool that's being made available that helps to aid people access state services in real time. And according to the state website, it's a live human-to-human services that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And to get started, you'll just need to download a mobile to your mobile device through the Apple Store, the ARIA app, and then click and register your phone number and just sort of make your way through that registration process. And then once you are in the Capitol, you will be able to use it for up to 30 minutes for free to help navigate the state Capitol. And then, of course, there is a fee after that. We will also have several ASL and ESL interpreters for the main speaker program, which will be held in the West Foyer, as well as CART services. Hearing assistance is also available at the Colorado Capitol to help improve speech clarity. Upon arrival to any of the rooms, the House floor or committee rooms, if you'll just contact the Sergeant of Arms, who is typically at the entrance to that room, and ask them if you can check out equipment in that area. Please keep in mind there are limited supplies, and there will be probably several hundred of us at the Capitol for Disability Rights Advocacy Day. So you're going to the Capitol. When you first enter the building, one of the things you'll have to do is go through what's called Capitol security. All visitors entering the Capitol will be subject to a search. There are X-ray conveyors and walk-through what we call magnetometers, which will be operated by law enforcement officers and security personnel. These ensure that firearms and other dangerous items do not enter the building. Once you get through security, you're going to want to make your way to the first floor on the west side into what is called the West Foyer. We hope that D-RAD participants will arrive between 8 and 9 a.m. There's no formal program during this first hour, but rather just a time to settle in and find your way to our main gathering area in the West Foyer, which is on the first floor, where you will also find a very light breakfast, generally sponsored by JFK Partners. You'll also like to take a look around the East Foyer, where several organizations will be setting up exhibit tables and information that you can look through. They'll have staff available to answer your questions about their organization as well. Just before 9 a.m., you want to make your way upstairs to the third floor so you can sit in the House or Senate gallery to observe the reading of D-RAD tributes and constituents being recognized and honored on the House and Senate floors. In the chamber, they will call the roll and then do announcements for introductions. Typically, during those announcements, a legislative sponsor will ask the clerk to read our D-RAD tributes. Then the sponsor and other members will speak about it, and legislators will recognize us, those of us who are sitting up in the gallery and standing on the floor, and they usually will clap in acknowledgement. At the conclusion of the tributes, you are welcome to remain in the House and Senate gallery to observe legislators for as long as you would like. You might also like to make your way back down to the West Foyer on the first floor for the start of the D-RAD bill review and speaker program, or maybe visit the East Foyer exhibit area or meet with your legislators or their staff, all of which begin at approximately 9:30. Again, if you have any trouble finding your way back, look for a support team member in those bright blue shirts. They can help you get to where you'd like to go. Beginning at 9:30, we will start the first of 2 bill review and speaker panel sessions. This is an opportunity for several self-advocates and disability rights stakeholders to talk about bills that are before the legislature this session, talk about why they are important to them, and give you some talking points about each piece of legislation. During this time also, there will be meetings with state legislators and legislative staff, and folks in the exhibit hall with exhibits that you can walk through and learn more about many of our disability rights advocacy organizations. Around 10:30, we'll take a 10 to 15-minute break. This will allow participants to move about the space a bit, connect with the new and old friends, use the restroom, grab a bottled water and a light snack, or move to a different space if you would like. Then again, from 10:45 to 11:30, we'll have our second bill review and speaker panel and meetings with state legislators. Around 11:30, we'll take a 10 or so minute break to set up for the final organized event of the day, the press conference. Our press conference is being led by Disability Rights Champion Representative Chad Clifford in the West Foyer. Guests include, but are not limited to, Senator Jesse Danielson, Representative Manny Rutinel, Representative Meg Froelich, Representative Yara Zokai, and Representative Gretchen Ryden, and the CEDU Executive Director, Danny Combs. At the conclusion of the press conference, the D-RAD team will have some closing remarks, and you'll be invited to grab one of our grab-and-go lunches, which you may enjoy there at the Capitol or take with you as you make your way back home. Please be sure to thank Craig Hospital and Pasco for generously sponsoring your D-RAD lunches. In case you're not already familiar, Craig Hospital is a world-renowned neurohabilitation hospital and research center that specializes in the care of individuals who have sustained a spinal cord or a brain injury. They're located in Englewood, Colorado. They're an independent, non-for-profit facility providing a comprehensive system of inpatient and outpatient medical care. You can learn more at craighospital.org. And if you're not familiar with PASCO, the Personal Assistance Services of Colorado, they help Colorado families care for their loved ones by providing home health care services and supports so that every person may live a fulfilled life in their home and community regardless of their disability. PASCO delivers home and community-based services that support long-term independence. They provide home health, nursing, personal care, and community-based services, as well as 24/7 backup services for nursing and in-home care. Their experienced intake specialists and nurses are there to help you determine what would best fit your individual situation, and you can explore their services at pascohh.com. Many of our participants requested the D-RAD team coordinate meetings with their legislators or their staff. We will confirm through email all of those appointments not later than the afternoon of the day prior to the event, Wednesday of this week. Most of those meetings will take place in the East Foyer on the first floor, just across the hall from our main gathering area in the West Foyer. If we were unable to confirm a meeting time, there is still plenty of opportunities for you to reach your legislator. One such way is to send a card in with a sergeant of arms and see if the legislator will leave the House or Senate floor to briefly speak with you. You can also ask a support team member to help you find your legislator's office or stop by and record a message in the East Foyer, and we will be sure to send that message to your legislator following the D-RAD event. So let's talk just a little bit about additional activities that you might want to partake in while you're at the Capitol. There are every hour on the hour, there's an opportunity to take a Capitol tour. You must sign up for that at the front desk. There's an information desk on the first floor. You can record a video message to your legislator in the East Foyer. You can visit your legislator's office or meet with a legislative aide. You can visit the exhibitor tables in the East Foyer, learn about current legislation in the West Foyer, and you can even stay the afternoon to observe committee meetings. So how does a bill become a law? Well, no law is passed except by a bill. Bills are generally introduced in the House or Senate, and they may not contain, I should say, let me rephrase. No bill, except general appropriations bills, may contain more than one subject, which is to be expressed clearly in its title. No bill can be amended in its passage through either the House or the Senate as to change its original purpose without going back to the House where it originated in or back and forth until both the House and the Senate have passed the exact same bill. The legislative procedure is virtually the same in both houses, and that's a pretty bare bones version of it, but it works kind of like this. Typically, a legislator will file a bill and introduce it in a committee. That committee then takes a vote, or they hear testimony and an explanation of what the bill is and how it works. And sometimes that testimony is from other legislators, sometimes it's from experts in their field, and sometimes it's from stakeholders just like you. At the end of that hearing, the committee typically will take a vote on whether to pass that bill along to the next committee. Once it's gone through the required committees, it will reach the House or the Senate floor to be voted on by the full body of the House or the full body of the Senate before it then moves to the other side. And then once it is passed on both sides, typically the bill will be signed into law by the governor. And then there's lots of special rules about what happens if the governor doesn't sign it, what happens if the governor vetoes the bill, so forth and so on. But typically, where legislators need most of our help is when those bills are in committee and they're looking for folks who have lived experience, people who bills will impact their life. They need for us to come and provide testimony and tell them why a bill or a piece of legislation is so important to us. So giving it context, telling our stories, telling our legislators why a bill is important, either because we want it to pass or we think we don't want it to pass because it will cause harm, or perhaps we would like to see some amendments in the bill that better meet our needs. So how do you talk to your legislator about your lived experience and how a bill might impact you? We recommend that you follow this pattern called C-RAC. And if you have time, rehearse it before you land at the Capitol. Remember, most legislators have very little free time while at their office, the State House, so you'll want to keep what you have to say to around 3 to 5 minutes. CRAC works like this: conclusion, reason, answer, and then restating your conclusion. So you're going to start with the thing that is most important. Tell your legislator what you want them to do, the conclusion. And then go move on to your reason. Tell them why you need them to make a change. Tell them your story. And then tell them the answer of why is legislation the answer to the problem or the challenge? Why can't it just be changed through policy or by talking to an agency or talking to a professional? So tell them why legislation is important in meeting the challenge that you have experienced. And then, of course, repeat your conclusion, what you would like them to do. It's also important to remember the importance of talking with your legislative staff and aides. Sometimes we get disappointed because we don't get to talk to the legislator themselves. However, often that legislative staff or aide will be able to deliver your message for you in the way that the legislator best receives that information. For instance, some legislators receive information better in writing. Some like it orally or verbally, just explain to them. Some like to have lots of data, statistics, or graphics. Those legislative aides will be able to help identify how that legislator best receives information and make sure your story gets told to them in a way that they can best receive it. So now let's briefly review a list of current disability rights and related bills that our legislators are considering this legislative session. So I've listed these out for you to review and consider before you arrive, and we will review additional talking points in that 9:30 to 10:30 session, and again from 10:45 to 11:30 at the state capitol. Medical necessity determination insurance coverage, children with complex needs and health waiver, paratransit services, community integration plans for people with disabilities, vocational rehab services, accessibility standards and building codes, communication devices in schools, communication services for people with disabilities at enterprise, eligibility redetermination for Medicaid members, banning student seclusion, updates to Medicaid, Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, Protect Students from Restraint and Seclusion Act, Colorado Voting Rights Act, Healthcare Payment System Analysis, the Uniform Guardianship and Conservatorship Act, and restaurant meals programs. If those sound like a lot of bills related to disability rights, they are. And that's just a selection of what folks told us were their top priority bills. If you have interest in any of those bills, we encourage you to attend the 9:30 session bill review, which will be held in the West Foyer. Some additional information we think is important for you to consider prior to arriving to the Capitol is around state and federal budgets. These are key for disability services. Colorado's state budget for the next fiscal year is being built right now. The new state fiscal year starts on July 1st. Colorado doesn't have enough money to pay for all of its current programs, so legislators need to cut $1 billion in next year's budget. Thankfully, services for people with disabilities have largely been protected so far. You'll want to tell your legislators how services funded by Medicaid, such as waiver services and family supports, have helped you and your loved ones live meaningful lives and avoid moving into nursing homes or other institutional settings. Remind them that these services are less expensive than institutions like nursing homes, so they are a good investment for states and they provide better outcomes for people with disabilities. You'll also want to talk about the federal budget. Congress is currently discussing budget proposals that would make drastic cuts to Medicaid, which is the primary funder of disability services. States and the federal government share responsibility for paying for Medicaid services. If the federal government cuts its funding, states will have to make significant cuts. Home and community-based services for people with disabilities would be especially at risk because they are optional for states to provide. Institutional services, like nursing homes, are mandatory. This means that people with disabilities could end up moving into institutions or going without needed services to live in their own homes and communities. You'll want to follow action alerts from the ARC and other disability organizations to tell Congress to protect Medicaid. State lawmakers can also put pressure on Congress people to protect these programs, so please tell them your concerns while you're at the Capitol. If you're not sure who your legislator is, you want to go to Find My Legislator, which is leg.colorado.gov. From there, you'll put in your street address and click search, and it will pull up all of your legislators. Be sure to write those down so you won't forget them and bring those with you to the Capitol. So how can you get involved? So beyond D-RAD and IDD Awareness Day, there are lots and lots of ways throughout the month of March and throughout the year that you can get more involved and communicate with your legislators what bills, what pieces of policy and legislation are most important to you. One is to attend town hall meetings, contact them individually through email or a phone call or a personal visit. What we call citizen lobbying, which is contacting multiple legislators to discuss specific bills and issues. Testifying on legislation. You can testify through written testimony, in person, or through online, what we call remote testimony. And of course, before you finish, let's remind you of our second day of advocacy at the Capitol, IDD Awareness Day, and those support team members and those bright blue t-shirts. Remember, they can help you navigate the space. It will be crowded, so you'll want to wear comfortable shoes and clothes. You'll want to take breaks when you're needed, and let those team members know how they can best help you. The schedule for IDD Awareness Day on Thursday, March 19th begins at 8 a.m. and concludes at 12:30 p.m., where we will all move over to the Denver Art Museum for a ticketed lunch. You'll have to have a ticket if you'd like to attend that luncheon, but all of the events, the advocacy events of that morning at the state capitol are free, and we sure hope you will join us. That's it for us. Thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you at Disability Rights Advocacy Day and IDD Awareness Day 2025.